Hi, Smart Chicks. It's Carol Maloney Scott. I'm back here on Sunday. It's Sunday at noon Eastern. For those of you who are watching the replay, I'm very happy to be here again with you guys. It's another beautiful day in Richmond, Virginia. At least I think it was earlier. My husband is off, is out of the house again. The dogs are downstairs, so we should have a nice, peaceful time together this afternoon. And today we're going to talk about mapping your ideal career plan. Excuse me. So I didn't really map my career plan, and we're going to talk about that. And as promised, I'm going to tell you my story. I've been really racking my brain though, trying to figure out how to tell you my story in a condensed enough version that it doesn't feel like it's going on forever, but we'll get to that in a minute. So no, I did not have a career plan at all, which is, why it took me so long to get to where I wanted to be, right? So I was over here and I wanted to be over here, but I didn't even know that I wanted to be over here, all those many years ago. And I did not do any of the work to figure that out until I was much older. So it really, hey there, Michelle. So it really took a long time for me to get where I wanted to be. And my goal is to help you, no matter how much time you've wasted or not wasted. Hi, Donna. I want you guys to have a shorter time period to get from where you are to where you want to be than I did. Even if you are older and you've, already feel like you've wasted a lot of time or you've made a lot of mistakes, that's fine. It happens to many, many, many of us, as you'll hear about in a minute. And we all know these stories, right? We have these stories, we tell these stories, we are these stories, right? We all make mistakes. And then for those of you who are, hi, Ellen, and those of you who are young and just entering the workforce, I really want to try to grab those people and those ladies and help them to see, how important it is to not just let your career happen to you, but to actually plan it and grow it and, create that path, that map of steps to get there. So I do have my key takeaways for today up on my other monitor over here, and I am going to hit these points. But first, I am going to tell you, as promised, my story. So there's a graphic, and I'm going to put it up later because it's really funny. There's a graphic I have that's basically just a scribbled cartoon thing, a scribbled crayon drawing that, looks like a 2-year-old did. And I always post that and say, like, this is my career happiness map, and it's like all over the place. So anyway, one of the reasons I haven't shared my story in the past really in great detail is because honestly, I just don't like to talk about myself that much because I feel like it's like boring. Like, who wants to hear all about me? And I know when I get on, thank you, Donna. I know that when I get, I really have to stop looking at the comments because I lose my train of thought every time. When I'm on these types of calls, that's what I have to say. When I'm on these types of training calls, or I'm trying to learn something, and the moderator, leader tells a whole big long story about themselves, I always find those to be really boring. But I don't know, maybe mine isn't as boring. I don't know, but we're gonna see. So I'm not going to tell you every single thing about my younger years because that's a story for another day. But I will tell you that I made some very bad decisions. So. In high school, I was a very good student. I was always, I told you guys I was the nerdy little girl carrying the notebook around, and just, writing in my notebook all the time and writing my stories. And, I was a very good student. And I was very outgoing and, wanted to do things, learn things, be everything, right? I loved foreign languages. I played the clarinet. I loved to write. And I just love to learn, right? I was just kind of like a little sponge, soaking things up. And then really what happened to me is when I got to be, 12, 13, 14, whatever that age is, I guess middle school age, and I discovered boys. I mean, obviously I had discovered them and probably had some little child crushes on them when I was younger, but that didn't stop me, from doing anything because I was making bad decisions around boys and then men, romantic relationships. that really derailed me. I had really lacked confidence in that area. I had very, very strong confidence in my academic experience and work, and I had, very strong experience, confidence and courage when it came to, all of the other stuff, right? All the other stuff. But I was really bad at and really lacked confidence when it came to the opposite sex and, interest in, I took French, Donna, in high school. So I really let that derail me in a really bad way. And I started to, not care about school as much because I was like, this boy crazy thing going on. But I'll tell you that I still did well in school. I still did well in school. School was still important to me. I was never a good science or math student. So as high school wore on, those were two subjects that really, they were the only subjects that caused my grade point average to not be, amazing, which is what it should have been. And I was very rebellious about science and math. I hated them so much. I mortally hated them, especially math. I mortally hated it. Had some bad teachers too, and really didn't have teachers that were good for somebody who has a hard time with math, and just doesn't think in those terms. So had some bad experiences with that. But I knew that those weren't the fields that I was going to go into, right? I used to ask, I remember in trigonometry class, raising my hand and asking the teacher, like, what is this used for? I don't know if you guys ever took trigonometry, but it's that sine and cosine crap, as I call it. And she said, that it's used in engineering. And I'm thinking, I almost wanted to close my book and say, okay, I'm out, I'm not going to be an engineer. Why do I need to know this? Why am I torturing myself? But we torture ourselves because of our parents, our counselors, and expectations, right? So this was already like limiting beliefs and expectations. I have to take these classes. I have to learn these things so I can get into college, right? So without going through, all of the issues that ended up being my first marriage, I met my first husband in the latter part of my junior year of high school, like right towards the end of my junior year of high school. That relationship ended up really consuming my life. It really did. And I have a beautiful, wonderful, amazing, talented, funny, terrific child from that marriage, my son, Nick. And we had some good times for sure. And, my ex-husband's not a bad person. We were just really not suited to each other. And, it never should have gone on as long as it did. But as I said, being this very insecure girl, he was older than me. And I think I was very, flattered with the attention. And I really let that relationship, and some of it was things that I think it was some things that he imposed upon me, but some of it were things that I imposed upon myself and my choices and decisions that I started to derail because of him. So when I went to college, I did not major in anything that I should have majored in or really wanted to major in because I didn't see a career path that I could get through quickly so I could get married. So that was super smart, right? Oh my God. When I think of that now, I was 21 when I got engaged. My stepdaughter is 21. My son is 25. So by the time I was my son's age, I was pregnant with him and already owned a house and was married to his father. And when I was my stepdaughter's age, I was getting engaged. The thought of my stepdaughter getting engaged right now is insane. I mean, if she said she was getting engaged, I would hope that her mother would lock her in a closet, because it just would be crazy to me right now, But, at the time, at 21, I felt like I was, 35. So I majored in international studies, and I will tell you 100%, I was trying to pick a liberal arts degree so that I could get good grades. And my plan was, and my father even supported this, which again, my father's a wonderful person. He's very smart, very successful in his career. He had a very long career in banking and sales. But my father was not a career coach, and he knew nothing beyond his own industry and he worked in the same industry, the same company, his whole career. So he didn't know any better. I really didn't listen to my school counselors. And now I had this boyfriend that I was worried about keeping when I went away to college. Recipe for disaster, right? So I majored in international studies because I figured out how I could graduate in 3 years with my 4-year degree. With this degree, I had some college credits from AP courses that I was transferring in from high school. And I think those were English for sure. I can't remember what else. And so this was my plan. I was going to go to school 2 summers. I was going to take summer courses and 2 January sessions. And I was going to figure out how to graduate in 3 years. I did graduate in 3 years. I did very well. Again, they made me take a math class that made me cry in my beanbag chair in my room trying to do my homework. But other than that, I did very well in college, and I continued my relationship with my ex-husband, then boyfriend at the time. And things were going along okay. And I had this plan, that when I graduated, I was going to go to graduate school. Well, I don't even know why I never did that, honestly. There was really no good reason why I didn't do it. Although I think once the reality of economics, set in after I graduated. So I was 20, actually, I graduated when I was just turning 21 from college. And I graduated in 1989. I sort of graduated in 1990 with my regular class. But I graduated in 1989, got engaged that Christmas. And my whole thought process, I think at that point was just, we need to save money to get married. We need to save money to buy a house. We need to save. And instead of thinking, oh, I'm going to go back to graduate school, I thought, okay, well, I don't have to go back to graduate school, full time. I was thinking I was going to get an MBA. Why was I going to get an MBA? Because my father worked in the business world and I thought that looked like a way to make money. So now I'm so far away from my interests. I mean, if you'd asked me a couple of years before, when I was in high school, before I met my ex-husband, I was interested in either majoring in psychology. I was certainly interested in anything to do with writing, journalism, those types of things. And those were probably my main interests. I really did have a desire to become a therapist or do something with clinical psychology. That would have taken a lot more, longer period of time for me to go for those types of degrees. But before I met my ex-husband, I was thinking that would be fine, right? I wasn't putting this time crunch on my very young self, to make these decisions. So I graduated. The economy that I graduated into was horrible. We lived in the larger New York metropolitan area. I went to Washingtonville High School, which is a tiny little school. Tiny little town in Orange County, New York, which is in the Hudson Valley region. So we were about an hour away from New York City. Our area was basically just a bedroom community for New York City. Everybody who lived in our area pretty much either worked in New York City, Westchester County, which was the closest county to New York City, or northern New Jersey, but very few people other than maybe someone who was a doctor, someone who had their own business, obviously teachers, medical professionals, people like that. But there really were no corporate jobs in our area at all. There were people who worked for the government. My ex-husband worked for the government locally, but nobody did. There were no good jobs. There were no good corporate jobs. So I started interviewing in New York City, and then I realized how far that commute was, and I knew that my husband, my boyfriend, was not going to like me commuting to New York City because I was never going to be home. I was going to get up super early in the morning, get on a train or a bus or whatever. I'd get home late, eat dinner, watch TV for an hour and go to bed. And that was going to be my life. He knew other people that did that, watched my father do it for a million years. And I knew he didn't really want me to do that. And then I thought, how is that ever going to be compatible with me having children? That was the other thing I was thinking about, right? Like, oh, I want a baby, baby, baby. I started to get the baby fever. So I just let all of these things derail me. So I didn't go to graduate school. I thought, oh, I'll get a job that'll pay for me to go to graduate school, but I couldn't find that job because I didn't have a degree in the right thing, right? And when the economy was really good just a few years before, liberal arts graduates were getting hired in all sorts of training programs in large corporations. You did not have to have a business degree. So, my father's advice that I didn't have to have an undergraduate business degree wasn't really wrong because that was what his company was doing. They were hiring people with English degrees and French degrees and psychology degrees and political science degrees and all sociology, all of these degrees that were just well-rounded, showing that you can learn if you had good grades, if you showed the aptitude to train to do something. And then they would pay for you to get an MBA or some other degree that would be more specific to help you become a CPA, help you become whatever, right, you wanted to do within that company. So I thought that was a plan. So that plan fell apart. Plans were falling apart left and right. I'm getting engaged. I end up, so I'm an industrious person. I can't just sit in the house and do nothing. So after the first few months that I was home, and this was even before I got engaged, because it was like the end of the summer, the first few months I was home, I wasn't finding a job. I was getting really, really, really depressed and feeling really bad about myself. So I said, I have to get a job doing something, right? So I went to the local mall and I got a job at this department store called Greens, which was a family-owned business in Middletown, New York. Long gone, but it was a family-owned upscale department store, a nice store. So I went in there and I got a job working in the shoe department. I loved shoes. I figured that would be fun, right? It was a very interesting experience, but so now we're going to do a little bit of fast forward, long story short, because I know you're thinking, where the hell is this ever going? I ended up getting recruited because I was so good at it. I was really good at it because I loved the product. I was a very industrious worker. I loved talking to people and I loved selling, so I was like a model employee, and of course, how many college educated, young women like me were working there? Like none. So I was like a model employee at Greens, right? So I got recruited into a manager role with another retail company because their district manager was out shopping for employees. So they were opening a store in this other shopping center that was actually an outlet shopping center that is called Woodbury Commons. It's in Central Valley, New York, and it's actually very, very, very huge and popular now. It's like a mecca of outlets. It's like unbelievable. It's like acres of outlets. So it was pretty new then in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. So I went to work for them because they were offering me a decent salary, pretty good benefits, and it was like 20 minutes from my house. And I thought, why the heck not? I'll take this job and in the meantime try to find something else, that's going to be better. But at least, they're going to put me through a training program. It's going to be fine. It wasn't fine. It was terrible. It was a living hell nightmare. But instead of, again, trying to find a job doing something else, I just kept working for different retailers. And what was very interesting is so they made me a store manager and then I got my own store, and that made it even worse and more stressful and more terrible. The hours were terrible. The expectations were terrible. The pay for what you had to do was terrible. Managing the employees was terrible. It was all terrible. And the customers were terrible. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And there was no way to ever keep my head afloat, and I was like 22 years old. So the guy, one of the chair, I think he was the chairman of the board of this company, lived very close to the store that I was managing. And he liked to come in on the weekends and just pop in and see how things were doing in this store, right? Very stressful, right? And most people would not be able to handle this. And the fact that I was only 22 and I handled it so well is kind of, I'm very proud of myself for that, but it was very stressful. So of course, everything had to be perfect when this man came into the store, or else my district manager would be calling me on Monday saying, I forgot his name now, which is unbelievable. I forgot his name, but he's like, Joe, if that wasn't his name, came in and, he was upset that he saw blah, blah, blah. So I had it, and he was an old man, and I had to give him a lot of attention. He came in on weekends when it was so busy and there was literally no time for me to be talking to this man, but I had to give him attention. He always bought something and I had to ring him up with his employee discount. It was just a circus, right? But when I left the company, this man called my home. I was still living with my parents at the time, or my mother answered the phone. Called my home and told me that he wanted me to come to New York City and interview to work at their corporate offices. I didn't do it. How freaking stupid was that? I didn't do it because I thought, I'll have to commute into the city. I don't want to have to do that now. We're planning, we're starting to think about planning our wedding. And if I do that, I don't know, it's going to be scary. I'm going to have to get on, the train or the bus like at night, maybe by myself, which was all ridiculous because my father was commuting into the city every day at that time, from the same house. So really, it was just ridiculous that I did not take this man up on this offer. He loved me. He thought I was a really good, bright young woman. And he really, at the very least, they would have paid for my master's degree in something, right? And I would have gotten training, and I probably would have opened up so many more doors for myself. So I said no to that. Dumb as hell, right? So now I went to work for two other short-term retail management jobs I had for other companies that I also hated. The management was always terrible. It was always stressful. The hours were a nightmare. And what was really funny, though, is my ex-husband, then boyfriend, fiance, whatever he was at that point, he used to complain, about how I had to work on the weekends and how I had to work all these different times. And of course, I used to get a little resentful of that and think, well, you know what? You didn't want me to take any of these opportunities. Which is it? Do you want me to be local and, work on the weekends and holidays and nights or whatever? Or did you want me to, pursue something real and, make some money but have to go into the city, or we have to move closer to the city, which he wouldn't do that either because it was very expensive to do that. And he didn't want to do that. He wanted to buy a house right away. And he wanted, to live where we lived in the town we lived in and stay at his job. So I really felt very boxed in. And I already here in my early 20s was very boxed in. So I finally, so we got married. I quit a job right after we got married that I was one of the retail jobs that I was just so miserable in. I was like ready to jump out a window. I mean, I was not literally I was so freaking miserable. And the district manager was like Satan, and the regional manager was like Satan's mother. I mean, it was like so bad. So I quit. And because we had this little tiny, crappy, cheap apartment that my husband had, prior to us getting married. And, we lived in this ridiculous apartment. It was horrible, but, we had some fun times there, though, in that apartment. We did, even then, and then some really funny stories of stuff that happened there. But anyway, so here I am. Now, what am I doing, right? Okay, I quit my job. I have no children. I have this little crappy apartment. I have nothing to do. It was winter time when I did this. Go to the mall again and get another job. So now I got a job at JCPenney. Because I just wanted to work, right? Okay, now the JCPenney people tried to get me into their manager training program, which I refused to do, which I think probably was still a good idea. But again, that was at the time was a very, very big corporation, viable corporation. I had a friend whose parents, stepfather, worked at the corporate headquarters for JCPenney in New York City, which had moved to I think they moved to Dallas area or something. Anyway, I could have gotten, maybe into their corporate office, right? Going through their manager training program. But no, I didn't do that because I was planning my wedding and thinking about how I was going to have a baby at some point. And, that wasn't going to work again. Had totally forgotten about going back to school by this point, or at least it was way, on the back burner. So then I got a job at a children's clothing retailer, which actually I was there for 5, almost 6 years. Now that company, and that's where I worked when I was pregnant with Nick and when he was born, and right before I left to come to Virginia, that was where I was working. And well, actually there's another story there too. But so this job was okay. Considering that it was retail, it was okay. I had a tremendous amount of marital problems after my son was born. And so all of his little early years that I spent pretty much working, at this company were very stressful. So now I had this huge wrinkle of all these marital problems on top of, and I really should have gotten divorced then, but all these marital problems on top of everything else. So now I'm so stuck. Like, so when I talk to you guys about you're in a ditch, so we bought a house, I got this job. We bought a house. We built our own first little cute new house. It was a little Cape Cod. It was adorable. It was so nice. And, so we moved into our little house. I was pregnant before the first mortgage payment was due with Nick. So I got pregnant very quickly, which really wasn't originally the plan either. And I kind of forced that a bit because I got the baby fever, which if you've never had the baby fever, try to avoid it. It's a very crazy thing. So we had Nick. And then our marriage started falling apart. So all this is going on, and so now am I working on anything other? No, now I'm a working mother of a baby with marital problems that were really bad and, an expensive house in an expensive area with high taxes, and I'm not making a lot of money. And, so now finances are not great. Marriage is bad. I have this beautiful little child, was the only ray of sunlight in my life at that time. And he was certainly an enormous ray of sunlight at that time. And always, but, so I had this whole freaking mess going on. So, then we realized Nick was 4 years old, and we decided to move because he was going to have to go to kindergarten. The town that we were living in was not the town I grew up in. It was a bigger town in the area. And the school district was not good in that town. So we were either going to have to send him to Catholic school, which I did not want to do. Plus, to get into the Catholic school, you had to camp out the night before for kindergarten registration in the parking lot, like you were trying to get, like, tickets to Woodstock or something. It was just, so that wasn't a viable option, really. And also it was expensive, but that was not a viable option. And the local public school was not. If we moved to another school district in that county, our taxes on our house would have, and a house cost would have been so much more money. So we decided we need to go somewhere cheaper, and we also really wanted to go somewhere warmer. Started doing research, but it wasn't easy to either pick a place or to find a place that my husband, could get a job. So I left that company that I was working for because I was really, really desperately trying to just get out of this retail manager mode, right? And I had learned in those 5, almost 6 years at that company, that I really liked the human resources function of management, right? So I was the one that made the schedule. I was the one that hired and interviewed all the employees. I was the one who, really did like networking to try to find new employees. I did most of the employee relations type work. I did training and presentations with them, so I was really the one doing all that HR type work. And it was interesting because, all the other managers in the store, no one wanted to do that work. So it fell to me naturally because I was the only one that liked it, and I didn't like a lot of the other stuff, that we had to do. So I had this really big interest in human resources, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to go back and get a degree in this or whatever, but I have a lot of experience, and I have a lot of management experience and a lot of retail experience. There has to be a way to leverage this. So I saw an ad in the paper. This was when ads were in papers. There was an ad in the paper for this company that was it was an offshoot. It was a new offshoot of Filene's Basement, which is a Boston-based company. I don't even know if they're still in existence, but they were like a upscale discount retailer. And this was an offshoot of that they were creating. And there was going to be a store in Rockland County, New York, which this store was going to be about 45 minutes from my home. So I told my husband, this is a really good opportunity. I need to interview for this because this store was big enough that they were hiring individual managers for different functions. So they were going to hire a human resources manager. They were going to hire a person that was in charge of, sales, a person that was in charge of merchandising the store, a person who was in charge of the financial piece or whatever. So they were going to break it out, right, into all these pieces. So I interviewed for the human resources manager role and got it. I got probably 25% pay increase by taking this job. So that was really good, but I was going to have to commute. Have a long commute, whereas at the time, we lived 5 minutes from where I worked. But my husband was 5 minutes from our house. My mother was my babysitter for my son, my nanny. So it seemed viable. I said, I need to do this because this was a good step. This was a good step. Finally, at 30 years old, this was a good step, right? So I worked there for about, 3 or 4 months. It was pretty much a nightmare because we were opening this new store and it was very disorganized because it was a new company and it was kind of a nightmare. I was stuck working there a million hours. We were fighting like crazy at home. Nightmare, right? But in the midst of all that and trying to decide what to do about that, we got the opportunity to move here to Richmond. So we come to Richmond and now I'm unemployed again, right? But I don't want to give up on this idea that I have that I want to do this human resources staffing thing, right? I'm like, I want to do this, and now I'm in Richmond. And Richmond in 1999, the economy was amazing. The cost of living here was so low. The weather was amazing. The economy was amazing. There were so many opportunities. You could live someplace and drive 20 minutes and be at, a corporate headquarters or something, and have a job. This was not something we had where we lived. Living close to the New York City was not attainable for us because of how much it costs to live there. So we were looking at, oh my God, we're going to be able to get a really lovely home here, and live in a really nice neighborhood. And, there's going to be all these opportunities for me and it was going to be great. And it actually has been great. That piece has been great. So that was the second probably good decision, right? And I kind of had to bring my husband kicking and screaming a little bit, but he realized it was probably for the best for our family and certainly for Nick to be able to live in a place where he's going to have a good school and a nice neighborhood and all that. So we did it. So now I'm an unemployed mother. Well, my husband's going to work. We're living in an apartment complex. It's the summertime. Nick wants to go to the pool every single day, which we did. But now I'm trying to find a job. And now my challenge is all of my experience is in retail management. And I want to get into this, human resources field. So I knew that if I just applied, because I can't work in retail management anymore anyway. We're in a new place. I have a little child. My husband worked on some Saturdays. I could not work a traditional retail schedule without having my mother. Daycare was not going to work for the schedule that I was going to have to work if I worked in retail management. I explored that, and I needed a job that was a normal business hours, Monday through Friday, normal business hours, so I could put Nick in daycare, which I was fine with because he was more than old enough. He'd already been to preschool in New York, social little butterfly guy, and he was going to be going to school soon, so it was totally fine to put him in daycare. And I found one that was just really awesome and put him in there. Actually, I put him in there before I got a job because I needed it even just to go on interviews, right? And also to get him used to it. So we did that. So I'm looking for jobs. I knew that if I applied for, something like a human resources job just in, one of the bigger corporations, one of the banks, one of these types of places, it just wasn't working with my retail background. So I had the idea, and this is where I really first, when I look back now, I really first started with my career happiness map, because I thought, I really want to be over here. I want to work in a corporation on the human resources staffing side. I want to make a lot of money. I want to do great, but I'm over here, an unemployed woman, with a little child, with still not a good marriage, really. That's another whole story. And trying to figure out what to do to earn some money. So I applied for all these jobs. So finally, and this is the thing, I never tell anybody this, and you guys are going to laugh at this. The fact that I never told anybody, like, it's so terrible. It's like, it's not terrible at all. It's fine. So I ended up going to work. I said, I wonder if there's any retailers that need people like on a larger scale, right? So like a multi-store scale to do staffing. So I started to notice that was a thing, that I might be able to do that, like on a larger scale, so like an individual smaller store is not going to hire somebody just to do that. But I thought, maybe a multi-unit store or something bigger, they would. So I found this job and I took it. So I went to work for 7-Eleven stores. 7-Eleven stores had a big corporate location. Well, it wasn't big, the physical space. It was actually a shitty little office, but it was a big, there were a lot of stores in this market, and they were corporate owned at that time. I don't know if any of their stores are corporate owned anymore. I think they might all be franchises, but in New York, they were all franchises. But in this area at that time, they were not franchises. They were corporate owned and operated. So in the Richmond area, there were several different regions for these stores. And as you know, there's how often do you see a convenience store, right? There's a 7-Eleven on at that time, there was a 7-Eleven on every corner. Like, you drive for 5 minutes, there's another one, right? So I got a job as a regional recruiter or something like that, staffing rep, whatever, staffing 7-Eleven stores. So, that sounds all well and good. And I worked in the office. However, I had to train in a store, which was a wild, eye-opening experience just to see what people are like in a 7-Eleven store. So now the security aspect, of hoping that you're there not there when they get robbed. They get robbed, and they got robbed a lot. In some areas they got robbed, fairly often, like more than once a year, they got robbed. Of course, I wasn't there late at night, but, so these stores get robbed. So a lot of the people that would go in some of these stores, especially some of them were in bad neighborhoods and, in the district that I was overseeing. And I had to go to these stores because I had to interview the candidates for employment at the stores, right? So my job was to go to all these different stores and do like these little mini job fairs, which we would advertise, and the stores would advertise them. And I think we did some other print advertising, but people would come and get interviewed. So it was very interesting because, the caliber of people interviewing at 7-Eleven certainly is not the caliber of people I ended up interviewing, in the defense industry, cleared scientists and engineers and IT people, right? But, it was a job. they were nice to me, learned some things, but it wasn't where I wanted to stay. They were never going to be able to pay me anything. And I was really just getting a little sick of spending time in these stores. The people were crazy. I mean, it was just crazy. There were some really funny people I met though, and I did have some fun. Met a couple of people who were really nice that actually one girl had the same job as me. Actually, I wonder if she's in my group, in this group right now, but I connected with her on Facebook. Actually met her in a Panera by accident over here and connected with her on Facebook, and we were talking about it, laughing about it a little bit, but it was a long time ago. So I was there about a year, and I really needed to get out. And then I started to have a little more confidence. I said, I know how to do this staffing thing, and I know that I can take it to the next level. So I started interviewing for jobs like crazy. And, so many of them weren't working out. And I was getting so down on myself and frustrated. So I ended up finally getting into my first staffing company role. It was an IT staffing job, but they interviewed that they wanted someone who was entry level to IT staffing. They just wanted someone with a business staffing, whatever background. And finally, my skill set fit something. You needed to have a bachelor's degree, which I had. It didn't matter what it was in. And I just needed, so again, was this paying a tremendous amount of money? No, but there was an opportunity to earn commission on top of my base salary. The benefits were good. Again, it wasn't far from home. So I worked there. I worked there for 4 years, learned a tremendous amount, learned all about IT recruiting. I made some friends there as well. But the management there was a nightmare. I was treated poorly because I was from the North. I was very much discriminated against because of that. It was very much a good old boy network of management, also just very, very inept management. And they really started to not do well. The wheels were starting to fall off the bus. So I left there and went to another staffing company, which was actually also another small staffing company locally. And this was a time when the economy also still was very good in Richmond. They gave me a higher base salary. They gave me more, so they just gave me more of everything. Again, though, I didn't like working there for other reasons. That was my crying in the parking lot job. You guys have probably heard me say that. I would come into the parking lot and see my boss's car and start crying because I just didn't want to be there. By now, I was getting divorced. Also, while I was at this job, I was getting divorced. So upheaval this whole time. There's just always some kind of personal upheaval. You can see that theme with my marriage. And we had bought a house in Virginia about a year and a half after we first moved here. So we were in our house. My ex-husband moved out and I kept the house with Nick. And so now I was, when I got divorced, I was 36, Nick was 10 years old. And I was working at this company, crying in the parking lot and just not liking it. And then I was just, I was really allowing myself again to be typecast into this agency recruiting thing. I have to work for an agency recruiting firm. I didn't like it because it was too salesy. I felt like I was being asked to be like a used car salesman. I was being asked to guide people into taking jobs that really weren't the best for them just because I would make a commission and the company would make money, because the client company wanted to fill the role, right? So I hated that. So I ended up leaving there very abruptly. Like I was at my desk one day, and this just shows you like how people always say, I can't quit my job. I can't quit my job. Well, I quit my job and I was a single mother. I had no other job lined up. I quit my job. I literally went into my boss's office and told him I cannot do this anymore. I'm sorry. And then the owner of the company talked to me, and he was the nicest person in the world, really. I'm still so grateful to him. He's the nicest person in the world. He gave me, and I don't know why he did this. I think maybe it was because he realized how inept my boss was and how screwed up everything was, and how that was kind of his fault, I guess, for not doing something about all of this. And maybe he just felt sorry for me. I don't know. But he gave me 3 months of my base salary and my medical benefits. And the only caveat was to leave. And I was the one who wanted to leave. The only caveat was that, he said, of course, if you get a job before then, please tell me so that, I'm not paying you once you're already working. He's like, I just want to help to support you to find another job. So he was like a guardian angel. But if I hadn't done that day and taken that risk, I never would have gotten that deal. So I spent like almost the whole summer at home with Nick. I was the tannest I've ever been in my life that summer. My best friend and I went to the pool with the kids every day. And I was really taking some time now to really look at what I wanted. So I ended up going to my first corporate recruiting job. And my first corporate recruiting job also had risk because it was a 6-month contract to hire. And at the time, I had that offer, and I had another offer from another company that was really kind of more of a staffing company, but a little bit more of an executive search firm than a traditional staffing company. So I had an offer from them, and that was a local company. And then I had an offer from this big company that was only a 6-month contract. And I really debated what to do about this. And one day I was in the pool. So Nick was 11 at the time. So we were in the pool. We're always in the pool. We were in the pool, and he was only 11. But I said, you know what? I can't make this decision. Because the one job was a permanent full-time role, and the other was this contract job. And I'm thinking, in 6 months, do I want to be looking for another job again? But this would be so amazing if I could, get this job and stay there. That would be great for my career. So I told Nick my dilemma. He's 11 years old, right? He was very mature for 11, but he's still 11 years old, But I'm thinking, this decision affects him. I'm just going to tell him what I'm struggling with, right? So I told him, and I said, so what do you think I should do? And he was so dead serious about this because I think he was so happy that I was sharing this with him. He, treating him like a grown-up. And he said, Mom, I think you should risk it all. I said, what does that mean? He said, I think you should take the job that you really want. And I said, okay. I said, but what if I need to get another job in 6 months? That's a consideration. And he said, Mom, don't worry about it. You're good at getting jobs. Isn't that sweet that he said that? So he said, Mom, you're good at getting jobs. And I just felt like, I don't know, something about that vote of confidence from my 11-year-old, which I know is ridiculous, just inspired me to do it. I said, and I tell him this story now, and he can't believe that he inspired me to do it, but he did. So I took the job. I was there for 6 months. My boss, who just became a dear friend, a wonderful person, just worked for amazing people there. She ended up basically begging me to convert to a full-time employee and begged her manager to keep me because she wanted to keep me. So after 6 months, I converted to becoming a full-time employee there, and I made so much more money than I had previously made. I mean, really, I finally now earned a good quality salary, at whatever that was, 38 years old. I was at that company for 10 years. I was a recruiter there, and then I moved into some other roles. That was where I did career coaching and training and staffing operations and all that stuff. And that is where I decided to go to graduate school and get my master's degree in career development, which they were supportive of. So I finally got to do what I wanted to do there. And at that point, I really knew that, this was what I really wanted to do, was to be here with you guys today. But that took, another 10 years, right, of me getting up the confidence. And now what I was also derailed by being a single mother and being, trying to find another partner, right? So I wasn't boy crazy. I guess I was man crazy. And I had some really bad relationships in that time also that derailed me. And I was still allowing that, to keep me from my goals. When I met my current husband 8 years ago, we've been married just 5 years in June, but when I met my current husband, Jim, 8 years ago, I finally got some stability in my life, and I finally allowed myself to settle a little bit, into being me. And I think I finally felt comfortable being me. And I, embraced it. And, so work went well. I ended up getting laid off from that company and then went to work for a competitor company for a boss that I had at that company that had left a few years prior. But, still, as you guys know, I've told this piece of the story, I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't want to be doing recruiting anymore. I wanted to be on the other side. I wanted to be an agent of the person, of the job seeker, of the career happiness seeker, not the agent of the company, right? So here we are. So I don't usually tell that story, and there's more detail. Of course, the story could be 5 hours long. There's more detail in there, but really the bottom line is that I let fear and lack of confidence, and whether it was lack of confidence in the job world or lack of confidence in my romantic life, whatever it was, I allowed fear and lack of confidence to cause me to create really, to make really bad decisions. And then I really dug myself deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole. So if you find that you're in a hole, there is definitely a way to get out, because I took, as you can see, I went from, retail management that I didn't like, to retail management that was kind of okay. Then I realized my niche was human resources. Then I leveraged that, right? I leveraged that retail management experience and that human resources experience to do that bridge role. And you know what? That 7-Eleven role that I make fun of and I don't want to even tell people I did. And, I mean, people used to come in there every day just to buy a lotto ticket, a Colt 45, and a pack of cigarettes. Like the same people every day would just come through. And there were people in there talking to themselves, and there were people in there fighting, and there were, oh my God, and it was just so crowded all the time and so crazy, and the employees were crazy and everything was crazy, But, it was only a year. It felt like way longer than a year. But you know what? That was a bridge role that year that allowed me to get on the path. So like I was building my career happiness map. I was building my path. So when I thought about starting this business and I thought, what is my thing? Like, what is my hook? What is the thing that I did? How can I tap into my own experience or mistakes to help others do better? And that was what it was, is that I didn't have a plan. But when I finally got a plan, or I thought I had a plan, or at least I had a step of a plan, then I started to evolve it. But what happened is at every step, I got stuck again for too long. I should not have been at that company, the first company, for 4 years. I should not have been at the second company for 2 years where I was crying in the parking lot. And I should not have been at the other company for 10 years waiting to get laid off, because that even was not the ideal role for me. And that was the time when I really should have leveraged that experience, to do something else. And I became complacent. So I hope you've enjoyed that tale. So mapping your ideal career plan. One of the things you have to do that I didn't do is ask for directions, right? You know how they always say, well, younger people probably don't get this so much because of the GPS and the phone just tells us how to get where we're going, right? But in my day, I'm old enough, in my day, you had to ask for directions or be able to read a map, while you're driving and when you were going somewhere, right? And you had to be able to have a good sense of direction and know where you were going and remember how to get places or write it down, right? So we had to ask for directions, right? You really need to ask for directions in your career. You need to ask for help. So we talked about that yesterday in our networking session and how important it is to build a community of people that we can ask for help. So we need to reach out for help, and whether help is reaching out to others in, the networking space to give us informational interviews, help us to better understand the job market or their path, or, tell their career story, things like that. Sometimes it's asking for help at home so that, we can go back to school, we can pursue other things, we can have a longer commute. We can make our dreams come true. Sometimes we just need to ask our loved ones to help us with that, our partners to help us with that, right? And then really, we need to ask what we want at work as well, right? I mean, if I hadn't freaked out and quit that job, I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to be paid for 3 months. Now, is everyone going to do that for you? No, I'm not suggesting you should quit your job because someone might give you 3 months of pay. But what I'm saying is that it's a lesson in sometimes if you take an action, something better happens than you think is going to, right? And when you put that fear, but I got to the breaking point where I just couldn't sit in that desk for one more minute. So the longer you wait till it feels like that, the more desperate and risky you're going to need to be in order to get yourself into a happier place, right? But if we're designing our career happiness, we can get there quicker. Planning is essential to reach your goals. As you can see, my planning was a disaster from day one. My planning got derailed, in my later senior year of high school. My planner went literally off the rails, and my priorities were completely wrong and screwed up. My planning was a disaster. I became rebellious towards my parents. I just didn't want anyone telling me what to do, and I didn't seek any help. And I, kind of became like this little insulated person who's just going to do what she wants to do. And boy, did that really turn around and bite me in the butt. So planning is essential to reach your goals. So I'd like to invite you guys to really think about planning. We're going to talk about time management next month in this group. I have a speaker coming in, my friend Elaine Kazaya, is going to come in and speak to us about time management and planning our time and how that helps us to reach our goals. It is essential to do this. You do not have to have your 5-year plan mapped out, though. Really, what you really need to be able to do is see the step in front of you that is going to lead you to where you would like to be. And like I said, where you would like to be, right? We pick a target and we do everything we can to work towards that target, but we can course correct along the way. We can ask for directions again. We can reprogram the GPS. We can take detours, and that's okay. And it's actually great because, now we're learning more about new things that we didn't know about. One of my biggest problems when I was young is that we didn't have the internet. And, if I wanted to learn something, I had to really work at it. And those of you who are older who are on this call right now or watching this know that, right? We had to work a lot harder to get information. You couldn't just say, hey, who sings that song, blah, 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 and look it up in 1 second on your phone and know. Or, I wonder how you say, hello in Japanese. I'd have to go to the library and find a book, and then I still wouldn't know how to say it. So we could just say that into an app now and it tells us, right? So, and I'm not saying that young people don't have it hard today too, because they do. It's just a different type of hard. And then but in order to plan, we needed to do more work, right? And I didn't do any of the work. But now we really do have, with technology and this device and our computer and what we're doing right now, the world is smaller, right? We can reach so much more of the world so much easier. So there is no excuse not to ask for directions, ask for help, get the information that we need, and to do this planning that we need to do. And and my final point here on this key takeaways list is it starts with a single step. You have to take a step, right? You can't just say, in every job that I applied for and everything that I pursued on my map, I always said to myself, there's always that little negative voice, that little negative guy on my shoulder saying, you're not going to get this job. No one's ever going to let you do this. I used to say routinely, when I was in retail all those years in my 20s, I am never going to be able to get out of retail management. I am typecast in this role. I've been put in this box. I am never going to get out of retail management for as long as I live, because no one is taking me seriously to do anything else, and I'm never going to get out of retail. So I don't know about you ladies and what you put on your list of major life accomplishments, but I will always put on my list of major life accomplishments, like right after, becoming a mother, deciding to get divorced, finding love again, all those nice personal things. My number one professional accomplishment, even above starting this business, if you can believe it, is getting out of retail management, because that was the catalyst that allowed all these other things to happen. And all of them could have happened much more quickly had I done a better job at planning, asking for help, and really putting more structure around my process. If I had gotten a mentor, if I had been with working with a group of people that could help me. I didn't tap into any of that. I didn't have someone like me. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have anything that I could join, like Career Happiness Studio to become a career happiness designer. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know that was a thing, right? And even when I started reading all the self-help books after I got divorced, they were more around emotional stuff, right? And personal psychological stuff. They weren't around career, and then even when I did read a book about career, I had no support around it. I told you I read Barbara Sher's book, Refuse to Choose, about multi-passionate careers in, the 90s. And, it so resonated with me, but I felt so stuck where I was. And my current circumstances of having a high mortgage, a husband that wasn't all that cooperative, being the mother of a little boy in a bad marriage, in a high cost of living place I didn't want to live in, I felt I was in a box. So everything that book said, it didn't speak to me. But maybe if I had been a part of a group, maybe if Mrs. Scher had a career happiness refuse to choose group and I joined it, maybe that would have helped me, to move forward faster. So my goal is, with helping all of you, is to help you to reach your goals faster and better, and with less stress, with more ease, and just more happiness in your life, period. So as you guys know, Career Happiness Studio is open, and it is going to be open right now until, with all of the deals we have going with the early bird bonuses and the contests that we have going, that's all going to be open until Thursday at midnight. So please let me know if you have any questions. I will be working Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week, and then I am taking off, although I will still be, I know I'll be checking my phone for questions if anyone has any. But we're going to go on the boat, I think, on Thursday. We're going to go to Lake Anna on Thursday with my stepdaughter. So I'll have my phone if you need me. Asia will also, I know Asia, our wonderful community manager, will also be there to have my back, I think, on Thursday, hopefully, if you guys have more questions. But please contact me. So Monday through Wednesday this week, I am totally normally working. I'll be working my butt off trying to make sure that you all get what you need. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I am taking off because Sunday the 5th is my birthday. The fireworks are for me. That's what I thought my whole life when I was a little girl, that the fireworks were for me. I obviously knew they weren't, but it just felt like it, fireworks are just, that's what makes me think of my birthday. So I'm going to try to take those 4 days off, or the majority of them off, because I never take any time off. And that's another thing that I'm constantly telling all of you to do, is take breaks and take time off, and I don't do it. So I am going to do it. So, but between now and Thursday, I am all yours. So if you need me, please reach out. Have a wonderful rest of the day. I'm going to go play with my doggies right now, who probably are dying to go outside in the beautiful backyard. So have a wonderful day, ladies. Bye-bye.